Sigma and pi bonds. A sigma bond is a bonds that form when hybridized orbitals overlap each other end to end. These types of bonds are called sigma bonds, and these are usually involved in single bonds. These are the only type of bonds that are involved in single bonds, sigma type bonds, because the hybridized orbitals overlap each other end to end. So we'll look at examples after we talk about pi bonds. Pi bonds are formed when multiple bonds are involved, such as double or triple bonds. So single bonds, think about sigma bonds only. But when you have double bonds, you actually have one sigma and one pi bond. Or when you have triple bonds, when you have a triple bond, you have one sigma and two pi bonds. So you have one sigma bond and two pi bonds when you have triple bonding. These are usually formed, the pi bonds are usually formed when the unhybridized p orbitals, which are perpendicular to the hybridized orbitals. So these perpendicular shape help it make a pi bond. And pi bonds are weaker than sigma bonds. So remember that. Pi bonds are weaker than sigma bonds. Sigma bonds, because of the overlappingness, are a little bit stronger, and pi bonds are less strong. So when you hear about double or triple bonds, you should think both sigma and pi bonds. Double has one sigma, one pi, and triple have one sigma bond and two pi bonds. Pi bonds, notice that the symbol for pi is used here when I have pi bonds, and the symbol for sigma is also used for bonds. So sometimes the bonds will be labeled as pi or sigma bonds in that way. So you have to be very careful about how you remember the pi bonds. So when you have a sigma bond, remember, single bonds and pi bonds includes a sigma bond, which is the first single bond, and then the pi bond, which makes the double bond. And then the triple bond is the first sigma bond, and then the two pi bonds that are added to it. So remember, when you see those things, that sigma and pi bonds are related, but not exactly the same.